A man needs two things to feel settled, and everything else in his life sits on top of them like decoration. The first is money that holds steady. The second is a home he can walk into at the end of the day without bracing himself first. That is the entire list. Take one of those away and nothing else covers the gap. A promotion doesn't. A bigger number in the account doesn't. A room full of people telling him he made it doesn't do it either. And I want to be exact about the money one, because most men hear it wrong and then argue with something I didn't say. I'm talking about a flaw. It's the point where the transmission going out on the truck is an irritating Saturday instead of a 3-month problem, and where the dentist calls with bad news and it changes the plan, not the year. A lot of men hear that and think they're already there, and they're further from it than they'd admit out loud. Getting this wrong is what costs men their 30s. A guy knows something is off. He can feel it every day, and he almost always guesses wrong about the source. So he goes to work on the wrong one. He works more hours. He moves for the better title. He hits the number he set for himself at 30, and the thing that was eating him at 30 is still sitting there at 39 in a nicer kitchen. You can test this on your own life in about 90 seconds. Take a man whose home is solid. Nobody in that house is at war with anybody. He likes the people in it, they like him, and the front door is not a problem. Now put him $1,200 short every month, with no end date on it. Watch what happens to that man over a year. He starts sleeping in pieces. He checks the balance before he checks anything else in the morning, and then checks it again at lunch, even though nothing has changed. He says yes to work he'd have turned down 2 years ago. He takes the assignment nobody wants, because turning it down feels expensive. He stops going to the doctor about the shoulder, because the shoulder is a bill with an appointment attached now. The part men underestimate is what this does to the good half of his life. The house is still solid, and he can't feel it anymore. He's at the table with people who love him doing arithmetic in his head. He's in the room, and he's completely somewhere else. The best thing he owns stops registering, because a man who's behind can't enjoy the ground he's standing on. Money trouble doesn't stay in the money section of a man's life. It gets into every room in the house. It follows him into the hours that were supposed to be the good ones and eats them from the inside, and he can't tell anyone at that table what he's actually doing while they're talking to him. Now flip it and take the other man. His floor is under him. There's no question about the money, none. He could lose his job tomorrow and be fined for a year, and the place where he lives has been at war for 2 years. It doesn't matter what it's about, and it doesn't matter whose fault it is. Some of it is his. It usually is, at least partly. Watch what he starts doing with his time. He gets to the office 40 minutes early, and if you ask him why, he'll give you a reason about traffic. He volunteers for the trip nobody wants. He finds a reason to stop by the store on the way home, and then another one, and he sits in his own driveway with the engine off for 20 minutes before he goes in. I watched a guy do that twice in 1 week. Same driveway, same 20 minutes. Dinner going cold on the other side of that wall. The second time I asked him about it, and he told me the reception was better out there. That one stayed with me longer than it should have. And the money does nothing for him. He has the floor. He has more than the floor. He can buy whatever he wants on a Saturday, and it buys him about 4 hours. Then Sunday night arrives, and he's in the same house with the same silence in it, and there is no amount of money on earth that makes a man want to walk into a place he doesn't want to walk into. Ask yourself, which of the two your head went to the last time you woke up at 3 in the morning with nothing to do about it? Whatever showed up in that moment is more honest than anything you'd say out loud at a party. There's a reason it's these two and no other pair. They are the only two things in a man's life that he is never off duty for. He can leave a job at the office. He can quit a team, drop a hobby, cut off a friend who turned out badly. He cannot leave the question of whether the money holds, and he cannot leave the place where he sleeps. Both of them are there in the dark, whether he invited them or not. That's a lot older than any of us. For nearly all of the time humans have existed, a man's standing came down to two questions. Can he keep the people around him fed through a bad season? And is the place he sleeps somewhere he can actually sleep? A man who couldn't answer both of those didn't get to have ambitions. He got to have problems. The men who built anything worth remembering were the ones who had those two handled well enough to look up from them. That's the order it has always run in. The bad season is a layoff now, and the door he's watching is a different door. The two questions underneath a man's life are the same two. The strongest case against all of this is a list of men, guys who built serious things with their finances in ruins and their home lives on fire, and the fire was half the fuel. That list is long and it's real, and anyone who's read 3 biographies can produce it. Nobody on that list was settled, and none of them would have been better off calm. It goes further than that, and this next part is the one I have the hardest time arguing with. Give a man his floor and a house nobody's fighting in and nothing at all to build, and a lot of the time he goes soft. 18 months of that, and he's 15 pounds heavier. He's opening a beer on a Wednesday for no particular reason, and he's harder to be around than he was back when he had actual problems. That's real, and I'm not going to pretend around it. A man with both of these and nothing he's building will rot in place. He gets small. He gets particular about things that don't matter. He develops opinions about the neighbor's fence, and he'll defend all of it as being content. A man does need something he's building. That part of it is true, but a mission can't take the place of either of the two, and that's where it falls apart. Look at what the driven, broke, burning man is actually running on. He is outrunning something. That works, and it works well for about a decade. And then it takes its payment, usually out of his body, sometimes out of his kids, often out of the thing he built. Because a man in that state makes his decisions from panic, and panic makes bad decisions. Ask one of those men what he gave up to build it while everything else was on fire. The honest ones give you an itemized list, and the list is usually longer than the thing they built. Now look at the kind of ambition that actually lasts. The man who builds something over 15 years, instead of flaming out at 4, has to be able to lose. He has to take a shot that doesn't work and still be standing on Monday. That capacity is made out of the two things. The floor is what lets him survive a bad year without selling everything he owns. The house is where he goes on the night the thing fails. So purpose gets built on top of those two, and it can't be swapped in for either one. A man with a mission and no floor is doing crisis management with a good story wrapped around it. He'll call it a calling. Look at what he actually does with his week, and most of it is damage control with a deadline on it. And there's a test for this that men don't like. Take a guy who tells you his work is his purpose, give him a home that isn't at war and money that holds, and then see if the purpose is still there a year later. Sometimes it is, and those are the real ones, and you can spot them immediately. A lot of the time the whole thing quietly deflates, because what he was calling a mission was a place to be that wasn't his house. You see it clearest when a man gets a real offer. A guy gets offered the step up, 11-hour days, a city where he knows nobody, more money than he's ever made. His finances are fine and his home is fine, and he thinks about it for 2 weeks and turns it down, and he sleeps fine that night. Same offer, same money to the man whose house is a war zone. He takes it in 4 days, and everyone at the party calls it ambition. He took a job to be somewhere else. That happens constantly, at every income level, and it gets applauded every single time, because from the outside, a man leaving his house at 6 in the morning looks identical whether he's building something or getting out of the building. There's something men do instead, and it's far more common than the burnout story. They try to pay for one of the two with the other. It does more damage than the flameout, because from the outside it looks like a guy finally getting his act together. You've met the man paying for his house with money? Things at home are bad, so he works more, and the work does 2 jobs at once. It gets him out of the building for 11 hours, and it produces something he can point at when somebody asks how it's going. Nobody can criticize him for it. He's providing. 6 months of that, and he's further behind than when he started. He's out of the house more than he was. Whatever was cracked at home has had 6 more months to set, and it sets hard. And everybody who lives there has adjusted to him being gone, which means the way back in is narrower than it was in the spring. He bought distance from his own home, and he got to call it responsibility. The other one is quieter, and it's just as bad. His money situation is genuinely rough, and his house is warm. And the warmth becomes the reason not to look at the numbers. Everyone's getting along, nobody's fighting about anything, and nobody has opened the mail in 4 months. Then something breaks, because something always breaks. A job ends, a car dies on the highway, a test comes back and suddenly there's a specialist involved, and the money problem walks straight through the front door of the warm house and starts taking it apart room by room, and now he's handling both at once with no reserves for either. The warmth didn't protect anything. It bought him a delay and charged interest on it. These two are wired to each other in a way nothing else on a man's list is. Money trouble gets into the house and turns ordinary conversations into fights about nothing in particular. And a house at war degrades a man's earning, because a man sleeping badly for 2 years makes worse decisions at work, and everybody around him can tell. So when one goes, it doesn't stay one. Give it 3 years, and it's both. And by then he's stopped being able to tell which came first, which is exactly why he keeps working on the one that was already fine. You can spot the man who has both of them handled in about 10 minutes of conversation, and it has nothing to do with what he's wearing. He isn't in a hurry. He'll tell you no without attaching a speech to it. He can hear about somebody else's good year without needing to say something about his own. And he makes his decisions on a longer clock than everyone around him, because he's the only one at the table who isn't solving something urgent underneath the conversation. Plenty of men go 20 years with one of them missing and look completely fine doing it. Look closer at what fine is made of. He gets narrow. His interests shrink down to whatever's free or whatever he can do by himself. He stops being able to say no at work, because a man who can't afford to lose the job can't say no. And everybody above him can smell that from across the building, which is why he's the one they call on a holiday weekend. His health turns into a line item he keeps moving to next quarter. His friendships become entirely made of texts about nothing. From the outside, that's a steady guy who doesn't complain. From where he's standing, he's been holding one thing up with both hands for 11 years and hasn't set it down long enough to find out what his arms feel like. The first time I asked a man straight out what number would let him sleep at night, I braced for something enormous. He said 4,100 a month. He'd been carrying that number around like it was something to be ashamed of. That's the thing about the floor. It's almost always lower than the number a man is working toward. Guys are running at a target that would have changed their life at 40% of the way there, and they've never once sat down and worked out where the actual line is. So they can't tell when they cross it. They cross it and keep running. Neither of these two gets any encouragement from anybody, which is most of why they get skipped. Nobody has ever congratulated a man for having a home where nothing is being fought over. Nobody throws a party because your bills are boring and your account is dull. There's no announcement to make. The things people do congratulate a man for are the title, the truck, the second location, the photo from somewhere expensive. And none of those 4 move either one of the two. So a man spends his best decade buying applause, and he gets the applause, and he's awake at 3 anyway with the same 2 questions sitting on his chest. Both of them are also invisible when you have them, which is the trap in this. A man with a solid floor and a house he likes doesn't walk around noticing either one, so he assumes they aren't what's holding him up. He'll credit his discipline, his work ethic, whatever he's proudest of. Take one away for 6 weeks and he finds out fast what was actually doing the work. The moment I care about is the one where a man runs the honest version of his last 8 years. All the hours. The weekends he handed over, the trips he took, the thing he said yes to in March that ate the whole spring, and he sees that nearly every hour of it went into the side of his life that was already solid. The cracked side he never touched, not once, because touching it meant a conversation he didn't want to have or a number he didn't want to look at. So he spent 8 years reinforcing the side that was already holding. He did it with real discipline, and everybody praised him the entire way through. If you can name the exact conversation you'd have to have, or the exact number you'd have to look at, you already know which of your two is cracked. Most men know within about 4 seconds. The knowing was never the hard part. There are 2 things to do about it, and both of them are boring, which is exactly why they work and why almost nobody does them. Find your flaw. Sit down this week with what actually leaves your account every month and work out the number where a bad surprise is an annoying Saturday instead of a dangerous quarter. Write it on paper. Most men have never seen that number written anywhere, which is how they end up aiming at a fantasy instead. Once it exists, you'll know whether you're 600 short or 4,000 short, and those are 2 entirely different lives with 2 entirely different plans. You'll know something better than that too. You'll know what you're allowed to turn down. A man who knows his flaw and is standing above it can refuse the trip, refuse the promotion that isn't worth what it takes, and walk out of a job that's using him up. A man who doesn't know his number says yes to everything, because everything feels like it might be the thing that saves him. Then name the thing at home you've been walking around for months. You already know what it is. It's the subject that changes the temperature of the room when it comes up, and it's been sitting there long enough that everybody in the house has built a route around it. Find the part of it that's yours, because there's always a part that's yours, and handle your part before Sunday. You don't need a summit for that. One thing you've been avoiding, done without announcing that you're doing it, and without expecting anything back for it. It'll be smaller than you think, and it'll take longer to matter than you want. Both of these do. A floor gets built out of 11 months of unremarkable decisions, and a house gets quiet again, one unglamorous evening at a time, and neither one gives you anything to show anybody while it's happening. But run the version of your life where both are handled. You sleep through the night. You take a real swing at something because you can survive it not working. You go home at 6 because you want to be there, and the people in that house get the version of you that isn't doing arithmetic under the table. And that's the man who gets to be ambitious in the way you actually mean when you use the word. He can aim at something for 15 years. He can lose a whole year and keep going. Everything you want to build in the back half of your life gets built standing on those 2, or it doesn't get built at all. It just gets attempted, expensively, over and over. So get the floor under you. Make your own front door something you want to walk through. Then go be as ambitious as you want, because for the first time, you'll have something to be ambitious with.